Hello and welcome to Cleveland Classic Cinema. Tonight's movie is 1936's My Man Godfrey, directed by Gregory La Cava. In 1936, the country was mired in the worst depression it had ever known. It had actually started in April of 1929, when the economy entered depression, but was exacerbated when the New York Stock Exchange fell in October of that same year. By 1932, stock prices had dropped so drastically that they were worth only 20% of their original cost. This forced the closing of nearly half the country's banks, since their assets were based in stock portfolios, which in turn led to a loss in confidence regarding the economy, and less spending led to lower production, which led to factory closings and rising unemployment. By 1932, U.S. manufacturing output had fallen to 54% of its 1929 level, and 30% of the country was put out of work. This in turn created a worldwide economic slump due to the fact that after World War I, the United States had become a major creditor and financier of post-war Europe. By then, the total value of world trade had fallen off by more than half. It was in this atmosphere that the screwball comedy became popular. The typical screwball comedy involved a wealthy person, typically a woman, falling in love with a much less well-to-do but honest man. A perfect example of this is 1934's It Happened One Night, in which heiress Claudette Colbert falls in love with poor but honest reporter Clark Gable. This particular plot device was pretty much an American invention, reflecting the fantasy that rich people were miserable in spite of their wealth and could only find true happiness by falling in love with and marrying a person of a lower social position. The mother is invariably either a complete dingbat or a snobby dowager, while the father is an earthy wise man who remembers where he came from. They're usually surrounded by vapid, freeloading friends who mock and mistreat the nominal hero, the regular guy. The second staple of the screwball comedy is the fact that the hero and heroine initially detest each other. The woman hates the man for being so down-to-earth and unflappable, while the man hates the woman for being a spoiled snob. As the movie progresses, however, they discover that they have a lot in common and that their individual personalities complement each other, although they resist the attraction they feel. The third version of the screwball comedy is the flighty heiress falling for the studious, easily embarrassed intellectual and helping him get in touch with the freewheeling side of his personality, falling in love with each other along the way. My Man Godfrey takes elements of the three examples I just mentioned and combines them in a very entertaining, funny manner, which makes it a complete original. Director Gregory La Cava was born on March 10, 1892 in Towanda, Pennsylvania. He directed 168 films in his long career, starting with 1916's Der Captain's Magic Act. Called the best comedy mind in Hollywood by W.C. Fields, he entered the film business during the First World War when he went to work for the Walter Lantz studio as an animator, working on the Katzenjammer Kids cartoons. After working for the Hearst Corporation as the editor-in-chief for the International Comic Films Division, he moved into live-action films in the 1920s, directing 2 reel shorts. He soon became a very popular director, but not with studio executives. He had a habit of constantly rewriting studio-approved scripts, encouraging improvisation on the set, and allowing dialogue to overlap. He preferred working with actors he referred to as real, ones that could lose themselves in the characters they played. When he directed one of his more famous films, 1937's Stage Door, a film about a group of hopeful actresses living in a boarding house, he had the actresses starring in the movie actually live in a boarding house atmosphere for 2 weeks before shooting, observing their interactions and acting as a sort of father figure to them, going so far as to have a secretary eavesdrop on their conversations and take notes, while he constantly rewrote the script, sometimes incorporating bits of their conversation into the story. He shared a great friendship with W.C. Fields. Both men were alcoholics and spent time in sanitariums drying out, and he often directed movies for Fields without taking credit. Fields himself felt that La Cava was one of the few directors in Hollywood that understood what he was doing. He didn't only direct comedies, however. He was infamous for dealing with taboo issues in some of his films, most notably in 1940's Primrose Path, which dealt with prostitution, and in 1933's Gabriel Over the White House, in which a newly elected president, a lackey of his party, is nearly killed in a car accident, recovers and becomes an almost dictatorial leader in bringing the country out of the Depression. All of his films are worth examining, something I can honestly say about very few directors. He died of a heart attack on March 1st, 1952 in Malibu, California. William Powell was born on July 29, 1892 in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. He appeared in 95 films during his career, starting with 1920's Sherlock Holmes. He started on the stage in 1912 and 2 years later married actress Eileen Wilson. The marriage didn't last and they divorced in 1930. In 1924, he signed a contract with Paramount Pictures, eventually achieving stardom when he starred as Detective Philo Vance in 1929's The Canary Murder Case with Louise Brooks. His popularity grew with the advent of talking pictures as he possessed a stage-trained voice and had excellent comic timing. Disenchanted with the roles he was cast in at Paramount, he went over to Warner Brothers in 1931, where he was again cast as Philo Vance and was in a number of other movies. He met Carole Lombard in 1930 and they married a year later, but that marriage didn't last either, and they divorced in 1933, although they remained close friends. Moving to MGM in 1934, Powell was paired with Myrna Loy for Manhattan Melodrama. The movie's director, W.S. Van Dyke, recognized the chemistry between the two and cast them in his next movie as Nick and Nora Charles in The Thin Man. He won his first Oscar nomination for this movie and received a second for tonight's film, My Man Godfrey. In 1935, he appeared in Reckless with Jean Harlow, and although the two of them fell in love, Powell was reluctant to marry, owing to his two previous failed marriages. Harlow took ill while filming Saratoga in 1937 and died of uremic poisoning soon after. Crushed, Powell left the screen and went into seclusion. He was diagnosed with cancer the next year and was out of work for months, eventually returning to the screen with Myrna Loy in 1939's Another Thin Man. In 1941, he met and married Diana Lewis, and this time the marriage worked out. They stayed together for 44 years. Powell continued acting, garnering another Oscar nomination for 1947's Life with Father. His last film was 1955's Mr. Roberts. He retired from films at the age of 63 and moved with his wife to Palm Springs, where they lived happily until his death from cardiac arrest on March 5, 1984. Carole Lombard was born Jane Alice Peters on October 6, 1908 in Fort Wayne, Indiana. When she was 8, her parents divorced and her mother moved the family to California, settling in Los Angeles. She was spotted playing baseball in the street by director Alan Dwan at the age of 12 and signed to a one-picture contract, playing a tomboy in 1921's Perfect Crime. She attempted to stay in pictures, but no one would pick up her contract, and she went back to normal life, attending school and excelling in track and field. At 15, she quit school and went on the stage, eventually landing a contract with Fox, who cast her in a number of westerns. In 1926, she was seriously hurt in a car accident that resulted in the left side of her face being badly scarred. After she recovered, Fox canceled her contract and she worked for Max Sennett for a short time before moving to the Pathé Studios, where she met William Powell during the production of 1931's Man of the World. As I mentioned before, they married, but it didn't work out. In 1932, she met Clark Gable when they co-starred in No Man of Her Own, and they married in 1939 after Gable secured a divorce from his wife. At this time, she was with Paramount and became a major star after appearing in 1934's 20th Century, eventually demanding and getting a salary of $35,000 a week. Carole Lombard, in spite of her character in tonight's movie, was what you would call a tough broad. She instinctively knew how to deal with studio bosses and didn't allow them to bully her, which made them respect her. She was a very down-to-earth woman and made it a habit of making friends with crew members, often sitting and chatting and playing poker or pinochle with them between takes and always eating lunch with them. She swore like a sailor, pulled elaborate practical jokes, and was generally concerned with everyone she worked with. None of that "I'm too big a star to be bothered" stuff for her. She garnered an Oscar nomination for My Man Godfrey and used the clout it gave her to pick and choose the projects she did, rarely making more than one film per year. Her last film was 1942's To Be or Not to Be with Jack Benny. On January 6, 1942, Carol Lombard was flying back from her hometown after appearing at a war bond rally with her mother and 20 others. The plane crashed outside of Las Vegas, Nevada, and all aboard were killed. She was just 33. One of the things that sets My Man Godfrey apart from other screwball comedies is the fact that it not only deals with the rich, but it also shows the other side of society at the time. It opens in what was referred to as a Hooverville. This was the nickname given to the tar paper shack cities homeless people moved into during the Depression. The reason they were called Hoovervilles was because much of the population blamed then-President Herbert Hoover for the Depression. A famous quote of his, "Prosperity is just around the corner," is heard just a few minutes into the film. The two sides of society are juxtaposed early in the film, and the lines are drawn quickly and definitively when Godfrey backs a spoiled rich girl by the name of Cornelia Bullock, played by the beautiful Gail Patrick, into an ash pile when she insults him. He then meets Irene, Cornelia's younger sister, during her scavenger hunt search for a forgotten man, and ends up being hired by her. It seems her family has a hard time keeping butlers. Once Godfrey enters the employ of the Bullocks, we're introduced to Molly, their maid, who refers to herself as a seasoned campaigner after cluing Godfrey into the type of family he's come to work for. "Are they that exacting?" asks Godfrey. "No," replies Molly, "they're that nutty." One of the great things about this character is that although she seems blasé when we first meet her, it later comes out that she has genuine affection for her employers. The first member of the family he meets that day is Angelica Bullock, the matriarch of the family, played with delightful airheadedness by Alice Brady. After this, he again meets Cornelia, who doesn't remember him, and then meets Irene again, serving her breakfast. He then meets the last member of the family, the father, Alexander Bullock, played by the marvelous character actor Eugene Pallett, and the movie really begins. There's an excellent scene where Angelica's protege, Leech pianist Carlo, played by Misha Auer, imitates an ape to amuse Irene. The camera cuts to an extreme wide shot of the room as Carlo climbs all over the place, grunting, and it never fails to crack me up. The lankiness of Carlo as he galumps around the room, and the reactions of Mr. Bullock and Godfrey, which underline the absurdity of the entire scene. When you look at it from the point of view of construction, it's amazing. All the exposition needed is taken care of without sacrificing any of the humor, and the characters are drawn completely in just a few minutes. Carlo's freeloading, Irene's manipulative ways, Cornelia's malevolence, Mr. Bullock's increasing frustration with his insane family, but his love for them nonetheless, and the properness and humanity of Godfrey. It's really amazing. The movie is absolutely full of wonderful performances, even including the secondary characters like Franklin Pangborn as the MC of the scavenger hunt, Alan Mowbray as Tommy Gray, Gene Dixon as Molly, W.C. Field's favorite, Grady Sutton as Charlie Van Rumpel, and of course Misha Auer as Carlo. In addition to this, everything in the movie is beautiful. The costumes, the sets, the lighting, and there are a few subtle camera tricks present that enable us to identify with Godfrey. For instance, and this is a very simple thing, when Godfrey takes Mrs. Bullock's morning pick-me-up to her, the camera on a crane follows him up the stairs. Now what this does is put the audience on a level with Godfrey. If the shot were taken from the top of the stairs looking down at him, it would have made his character appear smaller than he actually was. This would have put the viewer in a position of superiority, and that's not what LaCava wanted. Again, this is just a simple example, and I certainly don't want you wasting your time looking at the movie instead of enjoying it. We both know this is going to be on a minimum of 7 times this week, so if this is your first time watching it, don't waste the experience studying it. If you're interested in its use of film language, watch it for that the next time it's on. Summing up, this just may be the best movie we've ever shown. So right now, sit back, relax, and enjoy My Man Godfrey, right here on Cleveland Classic Cinema.